would say thinking about adding veggies into meals wherever you can, it does keep you more full. It looks like more on the plate, which also does trick your brain as well to think that you're having enough and not having these tiny portions. Saying like, oh, you're eating again, or you're eating all of that, and that makes them feel really self-conscious. But it's all things that the dietitian has recommended. And so, yeah, I'd say don't be ashamed if you're trying to eat more or eat regularly and someone does make those comments, because you're doing the right thing.
Have you ever heard the phrase, eat more to lose weight? It can be confusing, especially if you're trying to drop some weight. It's one of those phrases, I think, that contradicts a lot of the phrases that we hear. You know, we've got to eat less to lose weight. And I think the concept of eating more to lose weight can be really conflicting to that previous advice. And have you heard the phrase volume eating? And volume eating is another one that gets thrown around a lot. Today, we've got a really special guest that's going to help us explore and unpack those phrases and help us try and figure out, you know, what can we do practically that can help our clients, that can help you as a listener to be able to make those changes in your life. My name's Mitch Smith. I'm the owner of Health Management Dietitians in Cairns. I'm a sports dietitian, and I guess our philosophy at Health Management is supportive, friendly, and most of all practical. And I think when we think about the different podcasts, the different health advice we hear, sometimes it can be really complicated and really confusing. And what we want to do is do something a little bit different in our podcast. We want to be able to focus on being able to incorporate really practical advice and translate that science, that evidence into what are you actually going to do? And we want our listeners to be able to go away and be able to make those changes in their life and go, I got that tip from Mitch or a guest on a show, and we really want to be able to help our clients make those changes as best as possible. Got a really special guest today who I would consider a really, really good friend, Georgia Gregory. Georgia is a senior accredited practicing dietitian at Health Management. She's a credentialed eating disorder dietitian. She facilitates the Queensland Eating Disorder Service private dietitian education group. That's a mouthful. For dietitians, and most of all, she's the most bubbly and happy person you'll ever meet. Georgia has a Bachelor of Nutrition and Dietetics, originally from the UK. She's got a slight British twang, so we won't judge her on that. And every single client that sees her just absolutely loves her for her kind, caring, and individualised approach. She works with all types of clients, mostly women trying to lose weight, those suffering an eating disorder, and general women's health issues such as menopause, PCOS. Georgia is a very good friend, obviously, who I have a lot of respect for and believe is one of the best dietitians I've ever come across. Welcome, George.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's really exciting, and this is your first podcast.
It is.
Done hundreds of presentations, but not so much a podcast.
Never a podcast, so I'll try and do my best.
I'm sure you'll do great. So I guess, George, you know, we've had a few conversations about this, and, you know, the whole phrase of eating more to lose weight, it's conflicting to some of the previous advice we've heard, isn't it?
It is. I think it surprises a lot of people when we talk about it, and I know when I talk about it with clients, they do get a bit confused of what I mean, and it's not always necessarily, I guess, eating more, but eating enough consistently throughout the day and really looking at that regular eating.
Yeah. And, you know, I think about, say, you know, some of the bigger blokes that I might see that might have a bigger appetite, right?
Yeah.
It's the whole premise is, you know, we're constantly telling them, you know, you've got to eat less, you know, have a smaller plate, you know, do those things. But it's a lot more than that. And tell us a little bit about, you know, how would someone eat more to lose weight?
Yeah. So I guess when I think of the clients I see, it might be people that have breakfast, they don't eat anything throughout the whole day when they're at work, they're just either not hungry or they're busy, and then they get home, they might just have dinner or snack a lot when they get home because they're so hungry. They feel like they're not eating and they they can't understand why they're not losing weight. But it's usually because there's such long gaps in the day that they're not eating for, that everything is slowing down, nothing's working as well, their hunger increases, their cravings increase, and so they feel like they're not eating, but it's just not enough throughout the day.
Where do you reckon it comes from? Like,
I think there's so much advice out there in terms of just like eating less, or people hear the term like calorie deficit and just feel like it means less and less. And so sometimes that can be confused as, all right, well, I need to just have minimal meals or skip meals entirely.
Yeah. So, all right, let's be real specific, because that's going to be the theme of everything we talk about, is I'm going to drill out every little practical little detail or something that people can change, right?
Yeah.
So let's pick on, a typical Australian meal, well, Italian meal essentially, but, we've made it our own in Australia, but a spaghetti bolognese, right?
Yeah.
Pretty stock standard family meal. And we know most kids will eat a spag bowl.
Yep.
How would you change that to fit the concept of a volume eating, or, eating more to lose weight?
Yeah, so I think when sometimes people think about a meal like spaghetti, it might be a whole big bowl of pasta, probably some mince in there, but not usually a lot of veggies, and so it can end up being a very high carbohydrate or high calorie meal. So the way I think about it is trying to add at least some veggies in there if you haven't already, rather than just like onion or just tomato. Usually I'd recommend grating in some veggies, because that usually can get absorbed quite well. So whether that's like carrot or zucchini, depending on whether you've got kids in the meal, not sure if that will go down too well. And then looking at the type of pasta as well. So there's a lot of like high fibre, high protein pastas that then keep you more full without having a lot more pasta in that meal as well.
Yeah, that's good advice. So, and you actually mentioned a couple of types of pasta that have, I guess they've been out for a while. But
yeah, one of my favourite ones is the Veda pasta, which I think my clients will know that I talk about. And they now have a spaghetti, which is a higher protein one as well, which is so convenient for meals like that just add in a bit more protein, bit more fibre, keep you more full. And so it helps to reduce the volume of the pasta while still having like the lean protein and the veggies. So that volume eating really comes into play there.
Yeah. And I think, like, when you think about, say, I keep picking on the spaghetti, right? Because I think it's just this real common meal that we all have, every week.
Yeah.
But, something like that, like a wet style dish, and a curry, a spaghetti, whatever it might be, it's a type of meal that I guess most kids will kind of eat. So, you can grate your veggies in, I suppose, for the kids. And then, the adults could even do, clumps of things like broccoli or cauliflower. And and one of the things that I think often gets mentioned is, obviously going to the smaller plates is a good strategy.
Yeah.
But if you're someone who's got a big appetite, you go to a smaller plate, like I'm left looking at it going, I'm not going to feel full about this. So you've got that mental element to it too, don't you?
Yeah, I think you've got to trick your brain to feel like you're eating enough when you are, trying to reduce portion sizes or trying to lose weight. So the small plate can work for some people, but not everyone. So then I'd say even, making up the rest of the meal with a salad if you're not a huge veggie person, but making it look like a bigger meal without necessarily adding more of those carbohydrates or proteins as well.
Yeah, I it's funny, and that's a really good example of, you hear all the time, the advice is go a smaller plate, right? And I think in theory, I think that's true. But if someone gave me a smaller plate, I'm going to mentally look at it and go, like, that's not enough.
Yeah.
So I think there's a bit of that, psychological, mental element that we've got to get over as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think when you get used to, say, like even slightly reducing portions, my clients do say that they get used to how it looks on their plate over time, or they used to just fill their plate because that was empty space in there. And you usually just eat what's on your plate, without really thinking about it, without recognising whether you're full or not. You'll just finish what's there. So sometimes serving up that little bit less can be helpful, that you'll probably still feel full afterwards, but you've had maybe 10, 20% less of that meal.
Interesting you say filling up the dead space on the plate as well, because I think about, like, with my kids' lunchbox as well. I think, if there's like a little bento box, you make them, and if there's like a gap free, that they realistically probably don't need anything in that gap, I'm filling it. And like, I'm a dietitian, I know better than that, and I'm still filling it.
Yeah. They might need it a little bit more than us.
Yeah. So, but it's hard because there's how we were brought up is, eat everything on your plate, right?
Yeah.
So it's a different concept.
Yeah.
Let's maybe make a little segue into, say, kids, right? Because I think the volume eating side of things is really important for kids, because I'm going to say, and I don't know if you sort of get the same, but I get a lot of kids that, they might have a good breakfast, they get to first break and eat all their lunch.
Yeah.
And there's nothing left at second break, nothing left for the afternoon, come home, open the fridge and the cupboard and just rate it, whatever they can see. And of course, it's all convenient foods.
Yeah.
What are some things that you would recommend for, say, kids in that, or parents?
I see the exact same, and it's such a long gap when you think about first break potentially being 11 a.m. and then they might not get home till 4 p.m. depending on the year they're in. So that's 5 hours, which is far too long for kids to go without eating. I'd usually recommend every 3, max 4 hours. So I think making sure they do have enough food, so they've got food for second break, and so that they're full enough that they're not trying to eat it all on first break as well, because otherwise that's no wonder they're starving when they get home.
Absolutely. And I think it also feeds in to when you think about when you're really hungry, and we talk about, I've heard you talk about it quite a bit, the hunger scale,
Yeah.
And I think the hunger scale is the more hungry we are, the less able we are to make better choices.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about the hunger scale, we're really thinking like 0 is just absolutely ravenous, can't even think straight, want to eat anything, all the way up to 10 where you feel so full that you feel sick. And so the way I describe it to my clients is that you don't want to get to either like extreme end. You want to stay between like a 4 to a 6 from memory, which is, you're feeling a bit hungry, like your stomach's rumbling, but you've not left it so long that you can't think straight. And then you stop eating when you feel full, when you feel satisfied, but you're not feeling like you need to like unbutton your pants and lay down, essentially.
Yeah, for sure. And I wonder if too, I know you work a lot with people suffering with an eating disorder, or just suffering with some, kind of negative food beliefs, in those sort of early stages. Do you think there's a little crossover between, say, someone who maybe doesn't have an eating disorder, we're not saying that, but this kind of like binge-restrict cycle, and same thing with the hunger scale? Yeah,
I think, sometimes when people are trying to lose weight, they are either eating a lot less or maybe skipping a meal because they feel like that's the most beneficial thing they can do. And then I find for a lot of those people, they get to an evening and they're so hungry and they can't really control that eating, which is when we think of binge eating, that like loss of control. They just want to eat everything. And so it is, the fact that they're skipping meals throughout the day, that's the number one trigger for binge eating, is skipping meals.
Yeah.
And that's not for anyone's lack of willpower or lack of self-control at all. It's biology, it's your body's physiological response to being starved. And so the best thing you can do to get out of that binge restrict is make sure you're eating enough and eating regularly.
Yeah. I can think of 2 examples. I can think of that sort of scenario. I can think of, the 15-year-old boy coming home from school, maybe didn't have a second break because he was too busy playing, real common, and then gets home from school, raids the cupboard in the fridge, right, starving.
Yeah.
And then the other scenario I can think of in that is maybe someone who leaves the house without having breakfast, not kind of too hungry, like go, yeah, I'm good, I'll have a coffee, I'll leave the house and I'll, get to work, or I'll, whatever it might be. But then you get to like that 8:30, 9 o'clock time frame and you're hungry, right? And if you haven't packed enough reasonable food for you, 8:30, 9 o'clock, what do you do? If you go buy a coffee and you see the ham and cheese croissant, or you see it, the muffin,
sausage roll,
how much more tempted are you to grab that, right?
Yeah, and that usually is the case, that people end up, I would say, making poorer choices throughout the day because they haven't planned, they haven't organised anything, and they do end up being hungry naturally, and so they're just buying what they can if they don't have the time at work to really do anything else.
So, 3 tips, George.
Yep.
We're thinking, obviously, we're talking around the volume eating space, being organised, that sort of stuff. What would be 3 practical things that our listeners could go away with today from today's discussion?
Yeah, I would say thinking about adding veggies into meals wherever you can, it does keep you more full. It looks like more on the plate, which also does trick your brain as well to think that you're having enough and not having these tiny portions.
And that's because they're low calorie.
Yeah. So it's not adding a lot of energy, but it's adding in so much nutrition, so much like vitamins and minerals, all the good stuff that we want. And so whether it was at dinner and you're having, say just a pasta and there is no veggies in there, or whether it's a rice dish, whatever it can be, but having those veggies in there, they're so good for you. They help with all of the things that we've spoken about. So that would be my first tip.
Love it.
Second tip would be trying to think about fibre, how you can add fibre into the day. So that is your whole grains. I think about swapping like white bread to brown bread if someone's not already doing that, because that's going to keep you a lot more full and keep your blood sugar level a bit more stable, so keep you feeling good. And then third one, I always talk about protein with my clients. So I think, if it's breakfast and you're just having cereal and potentially that's not keeping you very full later, maybe adding a bit of Greek yogurt in there, or if it's toast and that's what you usually have, then having some eggs. Like there's really simple swaps that you can do to add that protein, add that fibre, and that's going to keep you feeling a lot better for the morning, I can guarantee it. But yeah, just keep you going a bit better throughout the day.
Awesome. And the regular eating, massive one.
Yes,
yeah.
I can't preach that enough.
And I want to finish on this point because I feel like the whole negativity around it would only take someone, say, in the office to go, "Are you eating again?"
Yeah.
And
a lot of my clients get that.
Absolutely.
People saying like, "Oh, you're eating again, or you're eating all of that," and that makes them feel really self-conscious. But it's all things that the dietitian has recommended, and so I'd say don't be ashamed if you're trying to eat more or eat regularly, and someone does make those comments, because you're doing the right thing.
Definitely. So breakfast, morning tea, lunch.
Okay.
I personally think afternoon tea is one of the most important snacks of the day.
Yeah, I agree.
And dinner, we're throwing veg in to really boost that content of dinner.
Yeah. And it still could be like a structured like after dinner snack if you're someone that does get a little bit snacky, rather than trying to completely cut it out, like be like, all right, this is what I'm going to have after dinner. I think that's better than trying to not have anything and then you're secretly trying to like sneak something in at 12 p.m.
Yeah. And I remember seeing, I don't know where I saw it, but it was like it was a visual, really, and we might try and recreate it, I think, on the podcast at some point. But it was like this image of, breakfast, morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea, dinner, and all of those foods, on a table.
Yeah. The like day on a plate, side by side. Yeah.
And it was like, it's this many calories, whatever it was, say 2,000 calories or whatever.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you go, that is way too much food, right? But then you look at what 2,000 calories might have looked in, say, like a sausage roll and a flavoured milk or something.
Yeah, 100%.
And you go, well, that's not going to fill you up for the day.
Yeah, and so I think that's a perfect example of that volume eating. Like someone on that side that's had, a sausage roll and iced coffee for breakfast and hasn't eaten throughout the rest of the day feels like they're not eating at all. Yeah. But they've had probably the same amount as someone else having, good nutrition for the whole day.
Yeah.
Or at least a lot of the day.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It is.
When you think about the whole eating more to lose weight. Well, look, George, been a pleasure. I think we've learned a lot today, and I hope that people can go away, learn from, this, and obviously feel confident to be able to eat more food.
Yeah.
Eat the bigger volume, the lower calorie, more nutrient dense foods that are going to make them feel more full.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if that's not from a weight loss perspective, it just helps people feel better throughout the day, have the energy. And so I think if you haven't already tried it, definitely give it a go and see how you feel after.
Awesome. Thanks, George. Thank
you
you for your time.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure. And I'm sure we'll have you on soon.
Hope so.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.